Welcome to the MBL podcast, where we talk to our members and hear stories of resilience, gain business tips, and learn what's next. It is the MBL podcast. What is going on, world? This is yours truly, Micah White, Vice President of Development for the Metropolitan Business League, and we are here with the MBL podcast. Today, I have one of my homeboys, my buddy, a very, very, very personable person right here in the Richmond, Virginia area. Show some love for Mr. Todd Parney. What's going on, Parney?
What's happening there, Bam? Hope you're doing well. Thanks for being to Parney's Pub. We're looking forward to this conversation.
Good deal. So we are in Parney's Pub at the Diamond, which the Diamond might have its days numbered. We hope the Diamond has its days numbered. But before we get to that, tell us about you. Where are you from? Born and raised?
In West Philadelphia, born and raised. On the playgrounds where I spend most of my days.
It is going to be one of those podcasts.
Yes. Now, born and raised in Locust, North Carolina, which is between Big Lick and Frog Pond, Bam.
What?
Yeah, Big Lick and Frog Pond are the big cities between where I was born.
Wow.
But it's 30 miles east of Charlotte, so middle part of the state of Charlotte. Raised in a really good Christian home, which explains a lot for me. And then I was in love with sports my whole life. My mom used to say that they knew what time of year it was by which ball I had in my hands. If it was a football, then it was fall. If it was a basketball, it was winter. If it was a baseball, it was summertime. So love of sports all growing up, and now I'm here in minor league baseball. Just finished my 34th season working in the minor league baseball industry.
Wow. So, all right. So sports. Was baseball your first sport? Was it your favorite sport? Or is it just baseball ended up becoming your life?
So, athletic-wise, I come from, obviously, you raised your eyebrows. Locust is a really small town. So if you got a body like this and you got a big frame, you pretty much played every sport, right? Every coach in the hallway looked for a person my size and wanted a piece of me. So all sports. But probably baseball was my best sport, but basketball was my favorite sport. And then when I was 13 years old, my parents moved us from Locust, North Carolina, to the suburbs of Philadelphia. And when we moved to Philly, my first year went to public school, which was a whole eye opener for this little country kid. I remember from 7th grade, I walked into the bathroom and there was dudes in there smoking cigarettes. I'm like, wait, what's going on here? I've never seen this before. And I thought I was going to get beat up by Arthur Fonzarelli or something like that.
Gotcha, yeah.
So my parents put me in a Christian school the next year, and a lot of my friends lived in the city in Philadelphia, and they came out to the suburbs to this Christian school. So then I ended up taking my basketball game into the city. Have you ever heard of the Sunny Hill League in Philadelphia?
Okay.
There's a lot of former NBA players played summer ball. I remember there's a kid named Jerome Pooh Richardson that played at UCLA and then played in the NBA. I held him to 56 points one night. He didn't want any more of me. So basketball was the love, but I probably should have followed baseball, and I played basketball at a Division III school when I went to Messiah College in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Thought about playing both sports, but I was challenged academically, Bam, so we didn't need to be doing
too much. Yeah.
I got a 3.7 my first year in college.
That's good.
1.9 the first semester, 1.8 the second semester.
Got it. Okay. Got it. That's funny. That's a joke. That's funny. So, moving out of Philadelphia, or while in Philadelphia, is that when baseball became introduced to you at the level that you're doing it now?
No, actually, after college, I got a job. I did an internship my senior year in college and met a guy named Greg Mace. There's actually some pictures of him in my office because he was so influential in my life. He was the ABC TV director in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He really introduced me to a bunch of people in pro sports. I worked at professional indoor soccer, my first job out of college. college. And from there, I met some baseball people who introduced me to a guy that you know and are friends with named Chuck Domino. Yeah. And then Chuck hired me for my first job in Reading, Pennsylvania with the Phillies. Shout out to the Phillies who are kicking everybody's rear end right now.
Yes, they are.
You know, as they say, the rest is history. That's when I started my baseball career with Chuck Domino in Reading, Pennsylvania in December of 1989. So I have now gone through bits of 5 decades.
Wow.
So then I walk through this hallway and I'm like, holy smokes, like I've finished my 34th season and this person's 23 years old. Like, what in the world?
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. So now you're in Richmond. How did you end up in Richmond? So I remember, for those that don't know, Richmond, we used to have the Richmond Braves, which was the farm league team for the Atlanta Braves. Some negotiations went into play where they wanted a new stadium. They demanded a new stadium. It did not happen. So then we ended up losing the Richmond Braves at the time, and we looked for another team, and we got now what we know as the Squirrels, but there was a process that happened as to even how we got to that name. So let's talk about, on your side, how did this come to you that Richmond might be a place that you would end up?
So back to Chuck Domino, I mean, that name is influential in my life and in my career. I had gone on to do other things without Chuck, and then Chuck called me one day and said that he was being hired by a guy named Lou DiBella, who I knew from my days in Altoona with the Pirates, and Lou was an owner of that team. He said, Lou's bringing me to Richmond to put together a staff, and I told him you were going to come run the team. And I'm like, you told him that already? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you didn't ask me first? He's like, no. I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, you know, sometimes in life, not to get too spiritual on you, but sometimes in life you just know, right? And you feel that peace. Doesn't happen a lot,
right?
You know, but that was one of those deals where I knew that this was going to be life changing for me. Like I knew that Chucky and I were going to be able to build something with Lou DiBella and the ownership group that would be probably the defining legacy of my personal career. I remember walking in this room the first time. Drew's been saying how this is a cool office. This place was, I probably can't say what it was.
I got you.
You know,
yes,
but it rhymes with pit and pole. Okay, that's what it was. And like it was just awful. And I looked at Chuck and I'm like, what are you doing to me, bro? Like you're ruining my life. And he goes, we have a clean sheet of paper here, and we're going to do something that's going to make everybody in Richmond proud for years and years to come. And that's what we've done, right? Like,
agreed.
You know, when we were naming the team, you mentioned this earlier, Ben. When we were naming the team, we used to have so much fun because back then nobody knew us. Like now, with the pants and the larger than life personality, like I can't go anywhere, right? But back in the day, you could kind of be a little underneath the radar. Mm-hmm. So we'd go and we'd be sitting in the corner having dinner and drinking and stuff, and you'd hear people at the bar, "Flying Squirrels, what kind of stupid name is that? I wish those guys that are bringing baseball back would go back to whatever rock they crawled out from." And we'd just sit back and laugh, right? And then we'd send them around to shots and tell them, these are from the guys that named the team the Flying Squirrels. And then they became our buddies, man. Right?
Funny what a shot does, right?
Yeah. And so that happened time and time again. And, you know, what I really remember about that is anytime you're building something, you got to have a lot of courage, right? Like your MBL owners and people that are members, like the Squirrels are, like you have to have a lot of courage. You have to believe in what you're doing. Like I remember the day we were going to announce the team name. Like, bam, no professional sports team, wait for it, in the world had ever named their team the Flying Squirrels. So Chucky and I were having dinner the night before at Lulu's.
Okay.
And we're having a nice steak, bottle of wine, and he's like, dude, what's wrong with you? You're so quiet. You're never quiet. You're always running your mouth. And I'm like, you don't understand, man. We're naming a team the Flying Squirrels. Like, what if it doesn't work? And he put his fork and knife down and he looked at me and he goes, don't you think it's going to work? And I go, yeah, I think it's going to work. He goes, then you got to have courage. You got to believe. You got to believe because you're going to be the person in front of the camera tomorrow when you're defending the name the Flying Squirrels.
Right.
So you got to believe in it. So what I did, I don't know if you remember that day, but I dressed up in a tight leotard. I could pull that off back in the day. I can't pull it off now.
It'd be better now, though.
Now I look like Jabba the Hutt. So a skin-tight leotard with a squirrel's belt and a cape that said Nutsy on the back, and I wore this mask. And I was a human flying squirrel, and I ran out when we announced the team name was Flying Squirrels, and people loved it. And then Lane Casadani interviewed me. He's like, "You want to take the mask off?" I go, "No, man. I'm a flying squirrel." And he looked at me and goes, "Wow, this is really going to be different," you know? And so we started establishing that we're three things. We're fun every day, we're different every day, and we're impactful every day. And those are the three pillars of the Flying Squirrels. And every business in the MBL, you have your principles, whether you believe it or you know it or not. You have your principles,
right.
You have your core values, you have them as a person, I have them as a person, we have them as businesses. Be fun every day, be different every day, and be impactful every day. And that is what made this organization, in my humble opinion, one of the signature entities in Richmond, Virginia 14 years later.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, the Flying Squirrels. I remember when I first read it in the newspaper that the team was going to be the Flying Squirrels. As a professional comic, I actually got a kick out of it.
Yeah.
I was like, but you're right. A lot of people that's serious about their baseball, they want like this mascot they can really identify with. It was different.
Yeah.
It was totally different. One thing I do want to say as it pertains to the Squirrels, one thing I've learned from you and what you all do is how you feel.
Hey, he's got his serious voice on right now. One thing I've learned from you. I didn't know it was 60 minutes up in this thing. I got him.
He got me. But one thing I learned from you is how you all fill in the gaps. I talk about, so I produce an open mic in the city, and in between artists, I talk about what we have to do from one artist to the next. And what I mean by that is, when I come to a baseball game, what happens in between innings is magical. Yeah. It is sort of like the glue that brings everything together, which isn't even baseball. When you think about businesses, how do you, or is it because of entertainment? I guess that's the reason you put that stuff in between the innings. It's more entertaining because it's not baseball, but it counts. It matters.
So no matter what business you're in, Bam, the way that you get more business is you become connected to people.
Right.
You become involved with their lives.
Right.
And one thing that people always look at me weird when when people say, you know, we need to support the squirrels, and I'm like, no. Support your church, support your favorite charity, support a cause. But like, it's our job to do things to make BAM want to be connected to us, to make BAM want to be involved with us, to make BAM want to participate with us. So when we do those on-field things, you're engaged in it, right?
Right.
You're participating, you're involved. So it's different. And I think that we're not in the baseball business. We're not in the entertainment business. We're in the memory-making business. So all those things that you see are part of memory making. And if you think about it, all businesses are really like that. Well,
should be.
Parney, how can a tire company be part of a memory making business? Well, my daughter and I, Lindsay, you know Lindsay. Lindsay and I went in to a tire. Well, this was down in the beach, and the guy behind the counter saw my hat, and believe it or not, the 757, the Squirrels brand, is alive and well down there.
Awesome.
And he's like, "Flying Squirrels, are you a fan?" And my daughter was like,
"Here we go."
Yeah, here we go.
We're off.
He's not going to get out of here for 30 minutes because he's going to be like, I'm an intern, and then it's going to turn into like, so, but this guy was a Baltimore Oriole fan. And my whole point is we talked for 15 minutes about baseball. That connected us. But now, every time my daughter needs an oil change or tires or whatever,
where you going?
That's the business I'm going to because of that guy. So every business can make a memory. Every business can find some way to connect connect with their patrons, right? You got to be personal, man.
So it's
like life is about being a person and not being transactional.
I was just about to say that exact word. Is I tell business owners all the time, being transactional can keep you in business, but being relational is what really gives the magic that you need to sustain at a high level.
Right.
Because it's bigger than just a transaction.
Right.
And in a city like Richmond, Virginia, which is a very tight, we're more of a town in the vibe that we have than a city. Being relational is imperative in business. So now that you think about, because a lot of people say, well, I'm glad you said you were not baseball. A lot of people don't understand like the business aspects of how many different companies function here on game day. How many roughly different businesses are here on game day, would you say?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. Internally, there's different types of business being done.
Got it.
Okay. And then there's businesses that we're involved with. So first, let's go over your left and my right. Internally, you have finance functions, so accounting, all that stuff. You have agronomy in field turf, so sports turf management. I'm thinking about kids. Your members that have kids that are going to college. People that go, oh, you got to be a sports management major working sports. No, you don't have to be a sports management major. You can be an agronomy major. Across the hallway where our locker room is, you have training, you have strength training, trainers training. Now we have nutritionists in the locker room, which.
Got it.
I mean, back in the day, we had beers and hot dogs.
You ate what you ate, drank what you drank.
Those guys
just
play
get on
great.
the field.
Those guys play great, right? And we have mental coaches now. So and over here we have marketing, we have broadcasting, we have ticket sales, sponsorship sales. So. Just in that short comment, I probably mentioned 15 different ways that you could work full time in this ballpark in all these different areas, right? And I skipped a bunch.
Right.
Skipped a bunch. On the business side, we own our food and beverage company, but inside that food and beverage company, you're dealing with JR and Dave Sirkowski at Brown Distributing. You're dealing with Performance Food Service. You're dealing with ice cream companies. You're dealing with Pepsi. You're dealing with vendors that give us those cups, the Funville cups, right? Like, so just there, I just named 5. Just in food and beverage, there's probably 75 different vendors that we deal with, right?
Hardywood being one of my favorite.
Yeah. All the local crafts. That just on the food and beverage side. On the business side, we have insurance. I feel like the Squirrels being a small business, but we're a high-profile small business.
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
We touch a lot of different businesses, printers, all that kind of stuff. But also we have a platform. So not only are we a small business just doing small business stuff and affecting other small businesses and medium-sized businesses and large-sized businesses, but we have a platform that if when something needs to be said or something needs to be done, we can use that platform to be very influential in the Richmond market. And that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of building this thing up from an office that, made me want to punch Chuck Domino in the face.
Like, what are we doing? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
To now is when I think the business community, I know what I'll say. So when I first got here, everybody wanted to talk about U-crops. I'm like, what is a rainbow cookie, bro? Like, come on, what's all this stuff about? Why is their square cake so good? Like people act like it must have like crack in it.
Right.
Like
everybody, and I just had my birthday, and they asked what I wanted, and I wanted a U-crops cake.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what in the world? They brainwash these people. But I listened and I watched, and I remember one day saying to, I think it was Chuck, I said, man, someday I want the Flying Squirrels to be like U-Crops, because when anybody needed something done in this town, they ran to Bobby, right? They ran to U-Crops. And I wanted the Squirrels to become like that. Now, I wouldn't say that we're like U-Crops, or certainly not like Bobby U-Crop, but I do feel like when people need to get stuff done, one of the top businesses that's on their their mind now is the flying squirrels. And we're really, really proud of that. So it's not necessarily about what happens on the field. It's about what happens off the field year-round, 365 days a year, that makes us not the normal sports team.
But that is very important. When I mentor comics or other entertainers, I said the magic is when you put the mic back in the stand and walk off stage. Right. That's when the magic starts. When you're on stage, that's vacation. Yeah. This is, hey, I'm having a good time. Once you walk off, that's when you got to get back to really what matters the most. That's what's going to get you back on stage.
So a lot of people want to be famous.
Right.
A lot of people want to be successful in sports.
Right.
But, man, it's about the work. Like every really elite athlete, like Jerome Bettis, one of my best friends. You know what game day was for him? Game day was a break. Game day was a break because he busted his butt during the week.
Right.
So Sunday was like, man, you get up, you're on TV, you get to tote the pigskin 25 times, you go to a nice dinner at Capitol House or Capitol Grill after down in Pittsburgh, and you go home in your Bentley. Everything's cool. Then you wake up Monday, you can't walk downstairs again. He starts back over on Tuesday, Wednesday, right? Like it's about the work, and that's one of the things, as I recently made the decision to downshift a little bit in my career. People are like, why are you doing that, man? You're still at the top of your game. I'm like, you don't see what I've done to my body. You don't see what I've done to my mind. Like 4:30 in the morning every day for 34 years, these eyeballs popped up.
Right.
And people like you who've been out with me at night say, yeah, but what about when you're out till 2 in the morning? I still wake up at 4:30 in the morning.
Your body's just conditioned that way, yeah.
And I get after it every day. And like the result of everything that you've seen in my career is a result of a lot of work. This stuff did not happen by itself. Like it's like people always say nothing's for free. Nothing that is good in life happens without hard work.
I agree. And so for entrepreneurs, I hope you took note of that, because I think quite often as entrepreneurs, when we make, again, the transaction, we think, oh, we're good. And then when the store closes, we go home and rest. But the ones that really make it to the top is that when the store closes, they're working harder when the store is closed than when it is open. Because when the store is open, you don't really want to work that hard. You want to be relational. You want to be able to talk to people, laugh with people, and have your employees enjoy the environment that you create. And if you're a stress ball at work, everything becomes a stress ball. And all of a sudden, you don't want that to be the brand of the energy that you produce inside. So, again, when you get off work harder as an entrepreneur. You just have to. And speaking of sports, real quick, I was reading an article, and a dude just joined the Lakers, and he said, we had our first voluntary practice, and he's like, I was going to be the first person in the gym to let them know I'm in business.
LeBron beat him.
He walked into the gym, LeBron was already in there. And the article I read said in full sweat, which means he had been there. Yeah. So, of course, when the lights are off, that's when the magic really happens.
So somebody told me this early in my career, and I wish I could remember who it is, Bam, but somebody said, it doesn't matter what you're doing when that camera's on. What matters is what you're doing when that camera's off.
Right.
It doesn't matter when everybody can see what you're doing. But tonight, when I'm alone and I'm not around you guys, what am I doing?
Right.
What am I doing to make myself better? And I grew up being a huge ACC basketball fan, growing up in Locust, and I was a Tar Heel. Right over there, I have a picture.
Tar Heel guy too.
I have a picture of Phil Ford, who you young people out there don't know who Phil Ford is, but Phil Ford's the reason there's a shot clock. Because Phil Ford used to dribble the ball around in the four-corner offense, and people would chase him, and the score at halftime would be 7-0. And then the NCAA got tired and said, we got to put a shot clock in, so Phil Ford stopped. Anyway, Phil Ford said one time that every winter he woke up at 5 in the morning because he thought of every other point guard in the ACC, and he wanted to make sure he didn't know what they were doing, but he wanted to make sure he knew what he was doing, so that when the lights came on the ACC Holly Farms Chicken Jefferson Pilot Game of the Week, he knew he was going to be more prepared than them. And in business, it's the same thing.
Right.
Like you have to do the things to be great. You just can't be great.
Right. And so 2 more questions real quick. This is a good conversation. Is there a player that has come through the Flying Squirrels that is in the league right now that Richmond should, I guess you could say, attach themselves to or notice?
I'll answer this answer this in two ways. 2010, we had a shortstop here. He was 22 years old out of UCLA, named Brandon Crawford. Brandon Crawford has now won 3 World Series as the shortstop of the San Francisco Giants. He's probably not going to be back with the Giants after 15 years of being with the Giants. So he's the guy who's gone there and made it. There's a guy that played for us this year named Marco Luciano, who is of Latin descent, like one of these kids that was signed out of Dominican when he was 16 years old. He's now 20 or 21. Got his major league debut this year. He's going to probably replace Brandon Crawford as a shortstop with the Giants. So remember that name.
Luciano.
Marco Luciano. Really got a real big smile. He's going to be a media darling. But one of the cool things about that question is after all these years here, we've had 87 guys make it to the big leagues, I think is right. And one of the things I love the most, we had this happen this year, sometimes guys get called up and then they get sent back down, right? Mm-hmm. Now, in most organizations, when that happens, the guy that comes back down is like not happy to be there.
Right.
And we had 1, 2, 3, 4 situations where guys were called down from AAA late in, like midsummer or late summer. Shane Matheny's one, Will Wilson's another. Those guys came right in this office and hugged me as hard as they could and said, let's go make the playoffs. Like, people like being in Richmond. Players like being in Richmond, and that's pretty unusual. Like, players, you talk about transactional, these guys want to do one thing and one thing only. You know what that is? They want to make it to the show.
That's right.
They want to make it to the big leagues. That's all.
That's why they're here.
For a lot of these guys, man, all their eggs are in one basket. They make it to the show or not. And not is not a good alternative, right? Not all the guys, but some of the guys.
But they exist, yeah.
And so when we can find joy in their heart, you know, I remember the first year, some of the naysayers were like, "Man, your players are going to probably hate playing for the Flying Squirrels. How silly is that?" And the first group, Brandon Crawford included, they got the units like, "Man, we're a squirrel. This is awesome," right? They were proud of being a squirrel. We continue that. We work hard. We work hard to make sure that the players are comfortable all through. There's nothing that they can't walk those 32 steps across the hallway. There's nothing they can't walk across the hallway to ask us to do for them because we want them to be comfortable. Because we ask them to do a lot of stuff in the community too, whether it's go read in schools or visit after school program, whatever it
might be, right?
You know, we're out in the community all the time, and they're a big part of that.
So, last question. The future, as you've been saying for the last 20 years, but whatever, what is the future of the Squirrels?
So it's bright, right? You know, the new ballpark is going to happen. You know, it's a daily thing. You know, now that I've backed off the day-to-day duties, I can focus even more on that, which is exciting for me. That's kind of like making history every day, right?
Right.
Like, you know, like there's some days when I go home, I tell Tom, man, that was some bull, and then I'm like, yeah, that'll be in my book because that was some bull, right? Like so you know, I think that the future is bright. We got some great leaders down the hallway that now with my shadow out of the day-to-day duties, they're going to be able to do their thing. You know, it's like when you see a young comedian now, and if you're headlining all the time and they're underneath your wing, they're going to learn every single time.
Every single time, yeah.
But at some point, Bam's got to like
move out the way
and
make space for them to elevate. Right.
Yeah, and that's what's going on here. So I'm very bullish on what these folks are going to be able to do in the next couple of years. And then, of course, March of 26 is where we're targeted for everybody's life to change and the new ballpark to be open up. And not only will that change the Squirrels, but it'll change the entire region because this ballpark is going to have to be a venue as much as it is a ballpark. So small, medium, large concerts, comedy shows, proms, weddings.
Weddings, yeah.
You know, I always joke, weddings, divorce parties, like, you know.
All of the above,
everything, right? Yeah. Like, this ballpark is going to have to be open 300 days a year in order to, you know, make it financially viable for the Squirrels to pay what we're being asked to pay, and for the city to be able to do what they're. Everybody's got a lot of risk, man. It's not just like people want to blame the city all the time. Everybody's got a lot of risk here, and we all have to work together to make it work. But the future is very bright. I think next year the Squirrels are going to have a great season. Remains to be seen, you know, who's coming back. But we made the playoffs 2 years in a row, and one of the great things is when I get to see how pumped up people are when we make the playoffs. Like, I don't know if you were at the playoff game or not.
I didn't make it, unfortunately.
We had over 9,000 people here on a Tuesday night.
Wow.
Right? Like, that's crazy. You know, It's crazy. So for 2 years in a row, we've had some of the biggest crowds in all of minor league baseball in the playoffs. So when people like to say, and I've said it before, our fans don't care if we win or lose. And I think that that's the truth.
I believe that is true, however.
But they sure as hell like us to win more than they like us to lose, right? And they sure as hell get more excited when we win and when we make the playoffs. And I think the biggest part of that, to round everything out, like any good comedian, your first joke becomes your last. I think that we've done such a good job of connecting as individuals with people that they fill this place for playoffs because they're happy for us.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Like, people are happy for us.
When good
things happen to us, people are happy for us.
Right.
And so, you know, that comes, rounding it out, that comes through a lot of hard work. 200 appearances a year to do speeches, Nutsy going to 600 places a year. Like that love wasn't just voila. It wasn't I Dream of Jeannie, which I watched.
You worked for
I Dream of Jeannie last night. Great show.
Old school show. For millennials, don't worry about it.
Yeah, you've never seen it. So I think that's a good way to wrap this show up. Is all that love came from really plowing hard in a garden and really planting a bunch of seeds and really working hard to nurture that love so that when good things happen, people are excited for us. And I think that's been really fun to watch. And I think all the time back to the first Christmas parade, we were walking down Broad Street carrying a banner that said Richmond Professional Baseball Club. That's all it said.
Because there was
nobody knew who we were. Nobody knew what this was going to be. And then 2 years later, we were the Grand Marshals of the Christmas Parade, and we were the Richmond Flying Squirrels, had our own float with a big squirrel on top of it, and everybody's loving us. And so, like the Christmas parade every year is amazing for me because I sit back and I watch how many people out of that 150,000 people we connect with, whether it's individually, yo, Parney, or hey, nice pants, or whether it's Nutsy, we love you, or there's always one family that bring a sign, and I hop off the float every year. They bring a sign that says, thank you for bringing baseball back.
Wow.
And every year they bring it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the MBL podcast with Parney.
Hey, he can finally talk now. Shut up for a second.
No, this is great. I'm loving the information that we got. If anything, the transactional versus relational, I hope that is something that sticks with you forever and ever, because that is where the magic is, as well as make sure you're working your behind off when you get off work. How about that? Yours truly, Michael White, Vice President of Development. See y'all next time on the MBL podcast. Thank you.